Goa is a small state. Norway is a small nation, and there are 7,000 kilometers between us. But Henrik Ibsen is a giant in literature. And it's really an honor for me to introduce these two contributors, who by serendipity, which has been mentioned already, both have connection to Goa. Astri, who by the way is my Hindi teacher, and discovered also had something in common with another man in the room. We have been to school together in Norway. And Ivo de Figueiredo, who actually, by the name, you understand, has background in Goa, is Norway's foremost biographer on Ibsen. So they are going to actually speak about the work of translating Ibsen to Hindi and Ibsen's relevance. I'm a diplomat. I'm not a writer. I'm not a publisher. But I will give you one example of how I have experienced Ibsen's relevance in the 21st century, and so has also to do with the translation. We made a translation. We financed a translation of one of his most famous play, A Doll's House, to Bamano, which is the local language in Mali. What did this engender? Two things. First, the theme about the place of women in society really resonated. In a country where it was difficult to discuss gender relations, but it was okay to discuss theater. So we had a flourish of Nora clubs all over the countries, bringing the debate about gender relations forward and gender equality forward in Mali. And by the way, the second was we translated into Bamano, and that was the first time this happened in the local language. Before that, everything was done in French, which started then an interest in writing in the local language. So I maybe have a small challenge to you then, Astri. You have translated this to Hindi, but we're in Goa, so maybe you should follow up and do it in Konkani next time. So, but without much further ado, I want to then unpack the work, which is considerable. And this is a treasure, which also we will use at the embassy. So here it is. Here is the translation of 13 plays of Ibsen. And give her a big hand for this. It's been a children's house. And then going to the talking.
Hello? Yes, here we are. Hi, Astri. We could do this in Norwegian, but we won't. And I think you young students, I would just want to tell you, progress in life means it goes to people that sit in the front. So I would encourage you in the back to come up. Besides, when they are filming, it looks like there's nobody here. So please, and the back rows, move up and take these places. We will not bite you, I promise. But we continue as that happens, or not? Let's continue. We know Norway. I know Ibsen's Norway. Henrik Ibsen comes from a very cold and very dark land that in many respects would be the opposite of India. How would you explain to me as Norwegian the Indian Ibsen? What is he in this country? How does he read?
I think that the themes that that Ibsen takes up are universal, and I think that literature brings the world to wherever you are. So in India, people are able to imagine a different world from the one they know. Ibsen has been adapted to Indian conditions as well. There have been many projects. There have been Ibsen festivals, and Pegint was placed in Kashmir, or there are connections. There are parts of India that are like Norway. So it's not so. I mean, if you think about places in Uttarakhand or Himachal Pradesh or Kashmir, they're not far away from Norway in needs, and so it's not so different. It's not so different.
And is there? I often wonder if there's anything specific in the Indian tradition, theater and film tradition, that makes a good match with Ibsen, like the melodrama of Bollywood movie. I often think about Ibsen as kind of he builds on the old melodramatic plays in many ways.
Ibsen's plays have also been made into films in India, both in Kerala and where it was The Master Builder that was made into a film by Adur Gopalakrishnan. And Satyajit Ray made An Enemy of the People into Ganashatru. So it's and there have been Hindi films which have had inspiration from Ibsen. I think that Ibsen is relevant in India. Each play has a different theme. I mean, you can talk about corruption. You can talk about in Ghosts. You can talk about priests trying to bully a woman and get the money out and whatever. I mean, these are things. These are universal themes.
Yeah, universal. But then there's also. It just strikes me that because Ibsen is not a part of the British canon in England, they never or in the Anglo-American world, that they have never really been taken with Ibsen. It's too dark and gloomy and too melancholic, too Nordic. So it's a kind of I think the Ibsen's presence in India skips all those old cultural roots of influence.
Well, Ibsen gets taught in world literature, but earlier Ibsen used to be taught as a part of English literature in colleges, and so I don't know whether everybody was aware of the fact that he wasn't English.
Okay, that's interesting to me, because I read the reviews of Ibsen in his time, and the British they just shook their heads. Where is the wit? Where is the Oscar Wilde qualities? Okay, I didn't know that, so I learned something today. Let's move on to the translation bit, because that's your profession.
Yes.
What would you say is the main challenges when you sit with the Ibsen dramas and you want to translate it into Hindi?
I don't think that it's so difficult. I haven't struggled. I think that Norwegian society 150 years ago had different layers, different classes, and which in Ibsen, that's a very important part of it. And so I think that you can, in Hindi, you can put this into, it's not difficult to translate that. For example, that you talk to a servant in one way and that you talk to a priest in another way. That's not hard, it's just...
Right. But what was wrong with the earlier translations?
Well, earlier translations went through English. And, every time you translate, you lose a little. But when they've gone through English, for example, English doesn't have a distinction now in modern English between di and du, or ap and tum and tu, which you have in Indian languages. So a lot of the use, Ibsen never did anything without thinking about it. He had, his choice of words, his choice of vocabulary or grammar was always, he had a very conscious, view to what he used. And so if someone is formal but they're flirting, for example, in A Doll's House you have Dr. Rank and they're formal. They say up to each other, but they're flirting. Now, when you don't see the up in that, then you don't realize that there is a formality to their relationship, and you might make them when you have your. What's wrong with this microphone? Or am I holding it too far?
It's okay.
It's okay. So you can't show that distance between the two of them if you don't have the up. And when you do a production, that's important, that you know how intimate they are, because intimacy or distance, language shows it. Another thing that I found very difficult while translating is that Hindi has the verb at the end, of a sentence. And Ibsen uses a lot of half sentences. So he'll have the subject and the verb, but not the object. Now, in Hindi, you have to have the verb at the end. So if you don't have the verb, the sentence doesn't make sense. And so I struggled with that, but I found solutions. Yeah.
I think you did. Yes, and I noticed something that is very. Oops. We have to do a better job.
I know.
Can I just a short reality check or a market survey? How many here has know of or have read A Doll's House?
Good.
Okay, know of or read. I will not, this is not. You're not in school now. I will not test you. And Peer Gynt, An Enemy of a People, The Wild Duck. So it's a dollhouse that people know.
Yes.
I would imagine.
Yes.
Okay, since let's talk a little bit about that. In The Doll's House, it says you have in an article I read about you. You make a point out of in the original Christmas Day. Nora describes as the streets are empty. It's quiet days, and that's not India.
Christmas Day here is people go out, people go for midnight mass, and then they go dancing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that's a hard situation to describe. I mean, that Norwegian in Norway, what happens is you go with your family, and everybody's either gone home to their hometown or their village, or everybody's gathered. So there's nobody out in the streets, and it's if you go out, it's like it's absolutely quiet, and that concept, because for me, translating a play which is from a Christian atmosphere, I don't find that difficult. I grew up in Delhi as a Christian, and we had our community and things, and so for me, I always made choices in the words I chose. I chose the language that Indian Christians in North India use, and I mean that was a very conscious choice on my part, because these are situations. I don't want to change everything from Christmas to Diwali. I think that people in India are quite capable of understanding that Christmas is celebrated. Or in this play, for example, when we dead awaken, references are made to the resurrection, and it's called Jab Hum Murde Ji Uthenge. And I just think that if you have a cross at every street, people must know about the resurrection, and so those things I take for granted, that my readers will have some basic knowledge of. So, but that was a bit difficult to explain, the quietness that Nora experiences at Christmas.
The big Norwegian silence, the immigrants in Norway are talking about the big Norwegian silence.
Yes.
Yes. Well, there are 8 plays that you have translated here, and A Dollhouse is not among them, because it's...
I published 4 in 2015.
Right.
And these are the next 8 plays. So now I have done a cycle of 12 plays, which are Ibsen's contemporary prose plays.
So, since you have a young audience here, let's adapt. They have read, or they know many of them, A Doll's House. Should we just talk a little about that before we go on to these plays?
Sure.
There's a tradition. There are two traditions of reading Ibsen, which goes through almost all his plays. You can either read them as heroic plays or ironic plays. Are the hero a real hero or a pathetic hero? So that would be the ironic approach. Is Nora a hero?
None of Ibsen's characters are heroes or villains. They all have, the heroes have flaws and the villains have good qualities. So some people look at what Nora does as heroic because she if you know the story of A Doll's House, Nora has her husband is ill and she forges a check to pay for his treatment. And a person tries to blackmail her because she's forged this check. So, she's committed a crime, she's done something illegal, but she did it to save the life of her husband. And finally, she walks out.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm not a doll, you've made me a doll. I have to go out and discover what I want. Now the fact that she walks out, some people objected. In Germany, when the play was first performed, they said, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. But, we're in 2019. You can do that, yes.
Yes. It's always interesting to see when his plays are being read ironic and heroic, like Dr. Stockman from Public Enemy, Enemy of the Public. Sorry. What did I say? I was talking about the rock band Public Enemy, sorry. Yes, an enemy of the people. Dr. Stockman, who finds that the water in his village is polluted, and he tries to tell everybody, but they live from spa treatments in that village, so it would ruin them. So he's right, a hero. Yeah. So it's...
Well, in India, and this is also because all translations are based on the English translations, and what happens in An Enemy of the People is that Dr. Stockman, as he gets more and more agitated, he starts losing it. He starts swearing, and the swearing disappears in translation. Everything becomes nice, and I've looked at a lot of translations where the sentences are all correct grammatically, which is not so in the original. In the original, Ibsen tries to make you, his sentences are like the way people speak. You start off with a sentence, and then halfway you think of something else, and you go somewhere else, and then you come to the third place, and then you come back to what you were talking about, and you might not finish. So, Ibsen uses that to show how we talk. Now, he also uses it to show how Stockman talks, and how he's getting more and more agitated, and he's starting to swear. Now, this swear disappears in the translation.
Uh-huh.
So, then you don't see it. So, in India, whenever An Enemy of the People is performed, he's always this hero, this wonderful hero. But in the Norwegian original, he's not a hero. He's someone who's losing it, and he's like, at the end, he's like, ugh. You don't get that.
He's a hero because he's right about water, but he's a clown because he doesn't understand how to talk to people. He's a terrible leader, and he's self-obsessed and comical.
Right.
So, and I think in times of troubles, in crisis, one tends to see Stockman as a hero.
Yeah.
But in times of progress and stability, he becomes a clown. I think today in Germany, because of the environmental issue, he's becoming a hero again.
Right,
it's
right,
strange
yes,
to see.
yes.
Yep.
So this is the thing, you have a play and you have a director, and the director can take whatever he or she wants and make it the way they want.
Shall we just, because our time is running out, you have 8 dramas that we have not talked about directly, but they go, I think the one that I would imagine that I would recommend for these young people would be The Wild Duck.
The Wild Duck, absolutely.
Can you say something about that?
The Wild Duck is about, it's about corruption. It's about a young girl who is very fond of her parents, and they live in an attic, and their grandfather has lost his job and his izzat in a way by someone got him, someone implicated him in something, and so he's lost his job, and he can't wear his uniform, his military uniform, and he can't. He drinks and
the
whatever.
whole family is in a way quite pitiful, or what's called it?
Falling apart, kind of.
Yes.
Yes.
But the father keeps the lifeline alive, always dreaming big.
He's the big inventor. He hasn't invented anything, but he's sitting around and working on his invention. And this daughter, and now someone comes who used to know the father before, and he wants him to discover, to have a true marriage, to discover what a true marriage is, and in that is a revelation that the father is not the father of the girl.
Yeah. So it ends terrible for the young daughter who believes in the dreams of her father and the lies. So who is right? The guy that wants to reveal the truth, or the other guy that says, no, let them live in the lie because the truth will hurt them?
Right.
It's quite touching.
Yes.
Play, I think.
Yeah. Sad, but it's about taking your life lies away from you, taking the lies that you believe in. I translate that as zindagi ka jhoot. That it's about removing zindagi ka jhoot. There are many plays here. Nirnanai came twice, or yeah. There's Rosmish Hall. There's Master Builder, Soolness. So you can see these books outside in the garden. They're there in the bookstore. I think that our time is up.
Time is up.
I would just like to also mention that I'm so grateful that both of you have come. Ivo has this book which is now been published in Norway in English. It's called Ibsen, The Man in the Mask. It's not available here, but it's available in Bombay at Kitab Khana. This is for anybody who's interested in Henrik Ibsen's life. In Norway, this is considered one of the best biographies that you can get, and you can buy it also on Amazon. And I would like to thank Ambassador Frydenlund, whom I went to school with many years ago, and who was my sister's teacher and mentor, as well as my Hindi student now before coming. But he also has an Ibsen connection because his grandfather was an Ibsen translator and was a theatre director and a film actor. So, it's just luck for me that you were here and you were here, and we could have this session.
And most of all that you were here. Listen, this makes a good doorstop as well. I would recommend you to borrow in the library, or or just get hold of this. Reading plays is a fast way of getting well read. It doesn't take so long. And Ibsen's plays, you will soon find that reading more than one, because they are connected. They are in dialogue with each other, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's. I would really recommend young people to read Ibsen, also Shakespeare, but I mean that we know. And you have done a fantastic job for global culture in this with these translations. So thank you, Astri, for what you did and for being here, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you. There are many plays here. Nanaya came twice, or dear. There's Rosmish Hall. There's Master Builder, Soolness. So you can see these books outside in the garden. They're in the bookstore. I think that our time is
Time
up.
is up.
I would just like to also mention that it's been. I'm so grateful that both of you have come. Ivo has this book, which is now been published in Norway in English. It's called Ibsen, the Man in the Mask. It's not available here, but it's available in Bombay at Kitab Khana. This is for anybody who's interested in Henrik Ibsen's life. In Norway, this is considered one of the best biographies that you can get, and you can buy it also on Amazon. And I would like to thank Ambassador Frydenlund, whom I went to school with many years ago and who was my sister's teacher and mentor, as well as my Hindi student now before coming. But he also has an Ibsen connection because his grandfather was an Ibsen translator and was a theater director and a film actor. So it's just luck for me that you were here and you were here.
Thank you.
And we could have this session.
And most of all that you were here. Listen, this makes a good doorstop as well. I would recommend you to borrow in the library, or if buy or just get hold of this. Reading plays is a fast way of getting well read. It doesn't take so long. And Ibsen's plays, you will soon find that reading more than one, because they are connected. They are in dialogue with each other, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's. I would really recommend young people to read Ibsen, also Shakespeare, but I mean that we know. And you have done a fantastic job for global culture in this with these translations. So thank you, Astri, for what you did and for being here, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.